When people hear the word genetics, most immediately imagine something fixed, something locked in stone. You hear phrases like, "it runs in my family," or "I was born this way." And while it's true that our DNA provides the blueprint, what most people don't realize is that the blueprint isn't the whole story. The fascinating and honestly liberating truth is that your genes are not dictators. They don't sit in a control room barking orders that you're forced to follow for the rest of your life. Instead, they're more like a vast library of possibilities, shelves stacked with millions of books that could be opened or left closed, depending on how you live, how you think, how you breathe, even how you interpret the challenges around you. This is where epigenetics comes in. Epigenetics is the study of how the environment, both the external one you live in and the internal one you cultivate, decides which books your body pulls off the shelf. The prefix epi means above or on top of, so think of epigenetics as the layer of regulation that tells your genes when to speak and when to stay silent. And here's the empowering part: you influence that layer every single day. Through your thoughts, your habits, your nutrition, your stress responses, you are constantly writing little notes in the margins of that genetic library. Those notes don't rewrite the DNA itself, but they do change how it's read. Now, why does this matter for stress resilience? Because resilience isn't simply a personality trait you're lucky to have or unlucky to miss out on. It's a biological capacity that is shaped moment to moment by these epigenetic markers. When you encounter stress, whether it's traffic on the way to work or a deep personal loss, your body releases signals, hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, neurotransmitters that prepare you to fight or flee. How efficiently you recover from that surge, how quickly your nervous system returns to balance, depends not just on your DNA, but on which genes are activated in that moment. And those activations can be trained. Consider this: two people may experience the same stressful event, say, giving a high-stakes presentation. One walks away shaken, exhausted, unable to sleep for days. The other walks away energized, proud, already thinking of how to improve for next time. What separates them? Part of it is perception, part of it is preparation, but underneath, there are epigenetic signatures that have been shaped by repeated exposure, by mindset, by lifestyle. One person's genetic library has stress response books wide open, amplifying fear and exhaustion. The other person has resilience-related pathways switched on, genes that regulate cortisol, reduce inflammation, and enhance learning from challenge. The most exciting discovery in this field is that these switches are not permanent, they are dynamic. Studies show that even a single session of breathwork, a consistent practice of gratitude, or a regular exercise routine can flip epigenetic markers toward resilience. Sleep hygiene alone, getting quality rest in darkness, with consistent timing, has been shown to change gene expression in pathways that regulate stress hormones and immune function. Your biology is listening, always adjusting to the environment you create for it, and it doesn't stop with you. The choices you make ripple outward. We now know that some epigenetic markers can be passed to future generations. This means the resilience you build doesn't just shield you from stress, it can become part of the biological inheritance you leave behind. You're not only mastering your own state, you're potentially gifting your children and grandchildren with the capacity to thrive under pressure. That's a responsibility, but it's also an incredible opportunity. So when you think of stress resilience, don't imagine it as some mystical trait or a gift handed out at birth. Think of it as a skill, but one that's written into your biology, shaped by how you engage with life. The food you eat, the sleep you protect, the breath you slow, the thoughts you choose. They are all pens in your hand, making notes in that genetic library. You're not stuck with the story you inherited. You are the editor, the author, the one who decides which chapters get read. And the takeaway is simple: you are not a prisoner of your genes. You are the conductor of how they play. Most of us have been taught to think of stress as the villain in our story. We say things like, "I'm so stressed out," or "stress is killing me." And in some ways, that language has wired us to believe stress is always toxic, something to avoid at all costs. But here's the truth. Stress is not inherently bad. Stress is information. It's your body's way of telling you that something matters, that something requires your attention, energy, and presence. The problem is not the stress itself, it's the relationship we develop with it. Think about it. Your ancestors survived because of stress. Stress is what sharpened their reflexes when they heard a predator in the brush. Stress is what pushed them to prepare for winter, to solve problems, to adapt when life threw challenges their way. That same biological machinery is alive in you. When your heart rate rises, when your palms get sweaty, when your breathing quickens, that's not a sign of weakness, that's your system mobilizing resources. It's energy on demand. It's your biology saying, pay attention, something important is happening. Now, here's where epigenetics ties in. The way your body encodes and decodes stress responses depends on which genes are expressed in those moments. And that expression is heavily influenced by how you perceive stress. If you tell yourself, this is terrible, I can't handle this, your biology interprets stress as a threat. Cortisol stays elevated, inflammatory genes turn on, and your recovery is delayed. But if you tell yourself, this is my body gearing up, this is energy I can use, the very same stress signals can flip different genetic switches, ones that promote resilience, faster recovery, and even learning. Let me give you a simple example. Research has shown that people who view stress as harmful are more likely to suffer negative health effects, higher blood pressure, greater risk of burnout, weaker immune systems. But people who reframe stress as a challenge, even when the intensity of their lives is the same, show completely different biological outcomes. They release hormones that promote connection, like oxytocin, they regulate cortisol more efficiently, and they actually grow stronger from the same stressor. In other words, the story you tell yourself in the moment of stress writes itself into your biology. Think of stress like a fire. Left unchecked, it can rage out of control and burn everything in sight. But if you know how to contain it, that same fire can heat your home, cook your food, and fuel your progress. Stress becomes destructive only when we fail to direct it. If you interpret it as a message, if you pause long enough to listen, you discover that stress is pointing you toward what matters most. It's saying this conversation is important, this project is worth your effort, this person means something to you. Stress highlights value. Without it, you drift through life, indifferent, unmoved, unchallenged. And here's the empowering part. Every time you choose to lean into stress rather than run from it, you condition your biology to adapt. You shorten the recovery window. You strengthen the neural circuits that regulate your fear responses. You train your genes to respond with balance rather than chaos. What begins as a conscious mental reframing eventually becomes automatic at the cellular level. Your body learns that stress is not a signal of danger, but a signal of opportunity. This shift doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means you become capable. It means the very things that once triggered anxiety or collapse become the raw material for growth. And the more you train this response, the more resilient you become, not because the world gets less stressful, but because you no longer see stress as an enemy to fight, but as a signal to harness. So instead of saying, stress is killing me, imagine saying, stress is fueling me, because the reality is, stress doesn't decide whether it breaks you or builds you. You do. When we talk about resilience, people often imagine it as a mindset alone, a kind of mental toughness that lets you power through challenges. And yes, mindset is essential, but biology doesn't separate mind and body. The way you live your days, the small decisions you make about how you sleep, what you eat, how you move, and even how you breathe are constantly sculpting your internal landscape. These habits are not just surface-level routines. They are signals to your nervous system, your endocrine system, and even to your genes, telling them how to regulate stress, how to recover, and how to prepare for the next challenge. Take sleep, for example. We often treat it as optional, as the thing we cut when life gets busy, but the reality is, sleep is not just rest. It's active biological recalibration. While you sleep, your brain clears out stress-related neurochemicals, your body lowers cortisol, your immune system rebalances, and your genetic switches reset for the next day. A single night of poor sleep can tilt your stress response toward overreaction, while a week of consistent, quality rest can reprogram your resilience at the molecular level. Sleep is one of the most powerful epigenetic tools you have, and yet it's one most people ignore. Nutrition works in a similar way. Food isn't just calories, it's information. Every bite you take sends chemical messages that activate or suppress genes linked to inflammation, energy regulation, and neural performance. Diets high in processed sugar and refined fats amplify stress signals in the body, making it harder to regulate emotions and focus. But foods rich in omega-3s, antioxidants, and micronutrients literally provide the building blocks for calmness, clarity, and recovery. You're not just feeding hunger, you're feeding your stress resilience machinery at the cellular level. And then there's movement. Exercise is often seen as a tool for fitness or appearance, but from a resilience perspective, it's training for your nervous system. When you push your body physically through resistance training, running, cycling, or even a brisk walk, you temporarily stress the system. Your heart rate rises, your breathing quickens, your muscles burn, and then you recover. That cycle of controlled stress and recovery is like resilience practice for your biology. It teaches your cells and genes how to bounce back, how to adapt, and how to get stronger in the face of challenge. Regular physical activity has been shown to alter gene expression in ways that enhance mood regulation, decrease chronic stress hormones, and boost cognitive flexibility. In short, exercise literally programs your biology for resilience. Breath might be the most underestimated tool of all. You breathe tens of thousands of times a day, but most of the time unconsciously. Yet, when you bring intention to it, slowing down the exhale, practicing rhythmic patterns, you send direct signals to your autonomic nervous system. You can tell your body it's time to calm down or it's time to activate. Controlled breathing influences heart rate variability, which is one of the strongest indicators of stress resilience. And the beauty of it is, breath is always available. You can't always control the world outside of you, but you can always return to your breath and use it as a lever to reset your internal state. The point is, resilience isn't just an abstract psychological quality, it's built and reinforced in the trenches of daily habits. These choices accumulate, they stack up quietly day after day, reshaping your biology in ways you may not feel immediately, but that reveal themselves when the pressure is on. When the challenge comes, when the unexpected happens, your system doesn't suddenly invent resilience on the spot. It draws on the reserves you've been building through sleep, nutrition, exercise, and breath, and this should be encouraging because it means resilience is not reserved for the few. It's accessible to anyone willing to align their daily actions with their deeper biology. Every meal, every night's sleep, every step, every breath, these are not trivial. They are the raw materials from which your future self is being built, so if you want resilience, don't just wait for it to appear in the storm. Build it now, brick by brick, in the ordinary rhythms of your life. Because when the pressure comes, and it always does, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll fall to the level of your habits. One of the most underestimated forces in shaping resilience is the way we think, the stories we tell ourselves about what's happening, the lens through which we interpret life. Most people believe mindset is just about attitude, but mindset goes far deeper than optimism or positivity. It's not simply a layer of motivation painted on top of your biology. Mindset changes biology itself. It directs the hormonal cascades, the neural circuits, and even the genetic switches that decide whether stress tears you down or builds you up. Think about what happens when you face a setback. Let's say you're preparing for something important, an exam, a performance, a meeting, and it doesn't go as planned. One person might walk away saying, "I failed, I'm not good enough, this proves I can't handle pressure." Another person facing the same event might say, "That didn't go the way I hoped, but it was a chance to learn, and now I know how to prepare better." Those two interpretations are not just psychological, they cascade down into physiology. In the first case, stress hormones like cortisol linger, inflammatory genes stay active, and the nervous system remains in a state of hyperarousal. In the second case, the body resolves the stress response more quickly. Oxytocin and dopamine are released, and the brain begins to integrate the challenge as growth. The event is the same, the biology is not. This is what I mean when I say mindset is molecular medicine. It's not just about thinking positive. It's about reframing adversity in a way that signals to your body, this stress is meaningful, it's worth adapting to. Gratitude is one of the most powerful examples. When you deliberately shift your focus toward what you still have rather than what you've lost, studies show you regulate cortisol more effectively, you strengthen immune function, and you even activate genes associated with longevity. Gratitude literally tells your cells, "We are safe enough to grow." Another example is optimism. Optimism doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means choosing to interpret difficulty as temporary and specific rather than permanent and global. When you adopt that stance, you're not just protecting your psychology, you're altering the brain's neurochemical state. Optimism recruits dopamine pathways that increase motivation, it reduces the inflammatory response, and it strengthens connections in the prefrontal cortex that help regulate fear. In other words, how you frame the story of your stress changes how deeply the stress embeds itself in your biology. The same is true for meaning. When stress is attached to a sense of purpose, it ceases to feel like suffering and starts to feel like growth. A mother caring for her sick child, a soldier protecting his team, a student pushing through grueling hours for a dream. These are situations full of stress, but because they are tethered to meaning. The biology interprets stress differently. Genes that regulate recovery, repair, and even neural plasticity are switched on in ways they wouldn't be if the stress felt pointless. Purpose transforms stress from poison into fuel. The beauty of this is that you don't have to wait for massive life events to practice it. Every day, you encounter situations where you can choose the frame. You can see traffic as wasted time or as a chance to listen to something uplifting. You can see a heated conversation as a threat or as an opportunity to grow in patience and communication. These micro choices are not just about how you feel in the moment. They are teaching your biology how to respond the next time and the time after that. Over time, you are literally programming your nervous system and gene expression through the stories you tell yourself. So resilience isn't just built by sleeping well, eating right, or training your body. It's also built in the theater of the mind, where meaning is assigned, where gratitude is cultivated, where optimism is chosen, and where adversity is reframed as opportunity. And when you commit to that practice, you don't just change how you think. You change how you heal, how you recover, how you grow. In the end, it's simple. The mindset you choose is not just a story in your head. It's a biological signal to every cell in your body. One of the most striking truths about resilience is that it doesn't stop with you. The way you respond to stress, the way you regulate your biology, the habits you choose to maintain, it all extends beyond your own lifetime. For a long time, people thought inheritance was strictly about DNA, fixed sequences passed down from parent to child. But what we now know is that the patterns of gene expression, the epigenetic switches that determine how those genes are read, can also be passed forward. That means the way you live today may echo in the biology of your children and even your grandchildren. Think about that for a moment. When you choose to manage stress with care rather than collapse, when you sleep deeply and consistently, when you nourish yourself with the right foods, when you cultivate a resilient mindset, you're not only shaping your own health, you may be creating a biological legacy. The molecular marks placed on your DNA through lifestyle and stress management can influence the starting point of the next generation. If you strengthen your capacity for recovery, you may hand your children a nervous system better prepared to handle adversity. If you let stress overwhelm you, those vulnerabilities can also be transmitted. It's not destiny, but it is influence, and it's powerful. You can see this in research on trauma. Children of parents who experienced severe, unresolved stress, such as war, famine, or chronic adversity, often carry heightened sensitivity to stress themselves. Their systems are primed to overreact, their cortisol regulation is less efficient, and their baseline anxiety is higher. These are not just psychological imprints, they're biological imprints written into the switches of gene expression. But the reverse is also true. Parents who cultivate resilience, who learn to process and recover, who train their bodies and minds to regulate stress more effectively, often pass on stronger resilience signatures to their children. That's not just inspiring, it's deeply hopeful, because it means the cycle can be interrupted and rewritten. And the influence doesn't stop at children. Grandchildren, too, can carry the echoes of choices made 2 generations back. What you practice today may ripple into lives you'll never meet. Imagine that the discipline to take care of your stress response, to master your internal state, is not just self-care. It's an act of care for people you love who haven't even been born yet. This truth adds a profound layer of meaning to the work of resilience. It's not just about surviving your own challenges or even thriving in the face of them. It's about becoming a steward of strength for the generations that follow. You are, in a very real sense, a bridge between the struggles of the past and the possibilities of the future. You can carry forward not just the genetic code you inherited, but a new pattern of regulation, one that prepares your lineage for growth instead of fragility. Now, some people hear this and feel the weight of responsibility. They think, if my choices affect future generations, then what if I've already messed it up? That's where the beauty of epigenetics comes in again. These marks are not permanent, they can shift. Every healthy meal, every night of deep rest, every moment of reframing stress as a challenge rather than a threat, every breath practice, every exercise session. Each of these is a vote in favor of resilience, not just for you, but for those who come after you. You are not locked into the past. You are actively writing the biological story of the future. When you begin to see resilience in this light, stress management becomes something greater than a personal project. It becomes a form of generational leadership. You're not just trying to feel better today. You're making sure the people who come after you start further ahead than you did. And that changes the way you see your daily habits. They stop being chores or tasks, and they become investments in a future where your children and their children inherit not only your DNA, but the resilience you've earned. So the next time you take a breath in the middle of tension, the next time you choose sleep over another hour of scrolling, the next time you reframe stress as fuel instead of threat, remember this. Resilience is not only for you, it is a gift that can echo through generations. At the end of the day, everything we've explored, epigenetics, stress reframing, daily habits, mindset, even the legacy we pass to future generations comes down to one central truth. You can't control the external world, but you can master your internal world. And that mastery is not some abstract spiritual idea. It's biological, it's neurological, it's psychological. It's the integration of all these systems working together under your guidance. Think about the way most people approach stress. They imagine if they can just organize the outside world, manage the deadlines, avoid the conflicts, secure the perfect conditions, then they'll finally feel calm, finally feel resilient. But life doesn't work that way. The world is unpredictable, chaotic, filled with pressures you can't anticipate and events you can't prevent. If resilience depended on controlling circumstances, none of us would ever find it. True resilience begins where control ends, inside the space where you learn to direct your physiology and your perception no matter what the outside throws at you. Mastering your internal state means you become the thermostat, not the thermometer. A thermometer reflects the environment. It rises and falls depending on what's happening around it. But a thermostat sets the environment, it establishes a baseline and regulates everything else around it. Most people live like thermometers, constantly pushed up and down by the stresses of the moment. But when you master your biology and your mindset, you shift into the role of the thermostat. You set the tone. You decide how much of the external world penetrates your nervous system and how your nervous system responds when it does. This doesn't mean ignoring stress or pretending it's not there. It means meeting it with awareness and skill. It means learning how to use breath to downshift from panic into focus, how to use sleep to reset your recovery systems, how to use nutrition to fuel calm energy, how to use exercise to train your capacity to bounce back, and how to use mindset to reframe adversity as opportunity. When you layer all of that together, you're not just reacting to life, you're creating a biology of resilience. And here's something profound. When you master your internal state, you change the way the world feels around you. People notice. Your calmness under pressure becomes stabilizing for others. Your ability to reframe difficulty becomes contagious. Your resilience gives others permission to cultivate their own. Mastery of the self doesn't isolate you, it connects you. It makes you a source of strength for families, teams, communities. The inner stability you build radiates outward, shaping the external world in ways you could never achieve by trying to control it directly. This is why stress resilience is not about building a fortress to hide from life's storms. It's about becoming so internally anchored that you can walk into the storm and remain steady. And that steadiness is not rigidity, it's flexibility. It's the capacity to bend without breaking, to adapt without losing your center, to face difficulty without collapsing under it. That's the essence of mastering your internal state, and it's important to be clear, this is not a one-time achievement. It's a practice, a lifelong cultivation. Some days you'll feel anchored, other days you'll feel like you're slipping. But every moment you choose awareness over autopilot, every time you respond with intention instead of reaction, you're strengthening the circuits and genetic patterns that make mastery possible. Over time, the inner work accumulates until your baseline shifts from fragility to resilience, from reactivity to stability. So the real question is not whether the world will stress you, that's guaranteed. The question is whether you'll become the kind of person who bends the stress into strength. Because resilience is never about what happens to you, it's about what happens within you.